Hey, Baruch Hashem, today's daf yomi is Sanhedrin daf Chavav, Sanhedrin 26. We're going to start on 26a, around 15 lines from the top where we got up to yesterday. And with the words Yochia Bar Zarnuki, Rabbi Shimon ben Yotzadak, we're talking about who's disqualified to be a witness. Today's daf is dedicated for Shmira for the Chayalim, it's all for the Shvuyim, Yeshua for Am Yisrael, and Zayt Sarah. So the Gemara tells us that Yochia Bar Zarnuki, Rabbi Shimon ben Yotzadak, Havad Ka'azli la'aber shana ba'asya. So, Rabbi Bar Zarnuki, Rabbi Shimon ben Yotzadak, we're going to calculate the year to make a new year in Asya. This is a first fundamental problem, Tosas points out, because how could they be doing this outside the land of Israel? Didn't we say, remember we learned this in Bab Basra, that you're not allowed to be, that Asya and Aspamia is outside the land of Israel, and you're not allowed to be Ma'aber the Shana outside the land of Israel. So therefore, Tosfos says it doesn't mean that they're going to declare a leap year, but they were going to make the calculations. And they were just making the calculations of whether or not it has to be a leap year. And furthermore, further proof, says Tosfos, is because from the story, it seems clear that it was a sabbatical year. And another, we said earlier, you're not allowed to make a leap year in a sabbatical year. So for this reason, Tosfos says they weren't going to make a leap year, they're going to do the calculations about whether or not to make a leap year. Pagabu Reish Lakish, so Reish Lakish saw them, and Itbal Ba'adayu. He decided to join with them, to his company, and he became a third wheel. Amar Ezo Echsi Hechi Avdi Uvda. He said, "Let me see how they're doing this. Let me see what they're doing." Chazielahu Gavra. He saw that there was a man, Chazielahu Gavra de Kakarev, who was plowing. Amar Len Kohen v'Choresh. He says this is a Kohen and he's plowing. Why does he assume he's a Kohen? We'll see that the Kohanim were suspected of not keeping the sabbatical year. So Amarlo Yachol Omar, so the two sages said to Rish Lakish, no, he could say, Agistun Ani Besocho. He says he has an excuse. What could he do? He could say, I'm just a hired worker and it belongs to a non-Jew. Or maybe I'm doing it because he has to pay the tax. And so, like we saw above, that if they had to pay the taxes, they were permitted to do the work even outside. They were permitted to do the work. So the Gemara says, Sucha, the next story, he saw he saw that the man was Kosach the Karmi. He was pruning the vineyard. Amran Kohen Vizemer says he's a Kohen and he's pruning. He says no, he could claim he's not pruning the field to make it better. He's just cutting the branches to make netting, and that would be permitted. He's not making the tree better. Hold on. Yeah, so Shia is correct. He says this relates to Malacha and Shabbos about what you warn for, and also relates to Malacha and Shabbos because it shows what's your intent when cutting it down. Thank you, Bill. Yeah, big shkoch. Thank you, Bill. So he says he could say Suchazel Gavradav Kasach Lakarmi. He says Kohen V'Zavar. He says no. He says he could claim that he was doing it to make a netting. He says the heart knows whether he's doing it to make nets or calculus or to be sinful, meaning he made a pun. So Gemara says, "Hi, Amru Bereisha." Which story did he say first? If you say that the first story happened first, Amru Bereisha, then he also could have claimed he was a hired worker. Ella must be Ha Amru Bereisha. At first he said, I was doing the netting. And then he said to them, oh, I'm just a hired worker. Gemara says, Maishna Kohen. Why did Rish Lakish accuse him of the Kohen? Mishum de Chashidi Ashvius. Kohanim are suspected on the sabbatical year. Kohanim are suspected of the sabbatical year. And how do we know that? We'll prove it to you from the following case. The because we learned in the Bride, said the Tanya, Seya Truma Shenafel Meya Seya Shel Shvius. Let's say there was a Seya of Truma, and it fell into Truma is the food that the Kohen could eat, and it fell into 100 saying of this sabbatical year fruit. Now Truma is nullified 1 in 100. So then Tawa. So then we're going to say it's nullified. But Pachos Mikan, but let's say it was less than 1 in 100. Now then it's not nullified, and we assume it's Truma. And so only a Kohen could eat it. So therefore we say Yirkavu, let it rot. The Gemara says, Abinam Bayam, my Yirkavu. Why let it rot? Yim Karenu will Kohen, but made Truma. Chutz made Truma, so sell. Why can't you just sell it to the Kohen and say we're selling it to you for the price that Kohen would typically buy Truma for, with the exception of that amount. So why can't you give it to a Kohen, basically? Because the Kohanim are suspected of violating this sabbatical year. So why are the Kohanim suspected of violating the sabbatical year? Rashi says because he'd be suspected of leaving it beyond the time where he's supposed to burn it. You can only eat the fruits of the sabbatical year while it's still in the field. After that time, you have to get rid of it. And the Kohanim would rule for themselves leniently. It's called Mora Heter for themselves, because they'll say, oh, because I'm allowed to eat Truma and other sacred food items, so therefore I can also eat the sabbatical year, because it's also a sacred food. So I could also eat the sabbatical year fruit even after the time. So then Rabbi Chibar Zarnuki and Rabbi Shimon said to Rish Lakish, this guy, Amri, they said, he's a troublemaker, Truduhu din, that this person is causing us problems. He's harassing us. Kimatu Asam, when they came to Asya, Saliku Igra, they went up to the roof. Shalfu Ladargam Bitute, they took away the ladder, so Rish Lakish was stuck on the bottom. He couldn't get up. Also, Kamei to Rabbi Yochanan. So when Rish Lakish came back, he goes to Rabbi Yochanan, his brother-in-law. You're going to allow these guys, they're suspected of the sabbatical year, meaning to say, why are they suspected? They're coming up with defenses for these two men who are clearly violating the Shemitah year. You're going to allow them to make a leap year? And they shouldn't be making the leap year. First of all, we don't trust them, and second of all, the leap year is it has a lot to do. If you don't trust them on the sabbatical year, maybe they're not going to do it properly. Other Amar lo kashu imidi. Then Rish Lakish says, nah, it's not a problem. Why? Emu lo kashu imidi. The Havi Ashlosh Bakar. They're no better than the three. They're no better than the three shepherds and three cowboys, which the rabbis relied upon to approve the sabbatical year. So we see from here they're no better than the Shloshei Bakar. Rabbanan Achush Banayo, and the rabbis relied upon them. So he called these guys Shloshei Bakar, which is an insult. So then at that point he said you can rely upon them. So Achush Banayu Samach, the rabbis relied upon them. Other Amar lo dummy, but then afterwards Rish Lakish said, you know what, it's not the same. Hasam Hadar Emenu Rabbanan the Bru Ahush. Well, in that case, Hasam Hadar Imnu Rabbanan the Bru Ahush Shata. After the rabbis heard about the shepherds, they went and they did their own calculations. But Hacha Kasha Rishaimu, these people are Kasha Rishayim. They're a confederacy of the wicked. The Kasher Rishayim Eino Min Minyan, and the confederacy of the wicked is not able to be counted to make the calculations to make the leap year. Now, Rabbi Yochanan said, Da'aka, that what you're calling them a confederacy of the wicked, that is not appropriate, that's not fair, and you've gone too far. Basically, we know actually what makes it even worse was that Rabbi Shimon ben Yotzadok, according to the Gemara Mesachas Nida, was actually the teacher of Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Chibar Zarnuki was even older than Rabbi Shimon ben Yotzadok, and so basically they came. They were actually his seniors, and now what happened was they came to him, and so they said. They were upset with Rabbi Yochanan that he was quiet. Also, coming to Rabbi Yochanan, Amrulay, Kari on Roy Bakar, Voamarle Marvel Midi. He said they called you Roy Bakar and you didn't say anything to us. You didn't. They called me a Roy Bakar. You didn't object. Amarlo Vikarlu Roy Tzon Mayamino. He said if you had called you the shepherds of sheep, what would I have said to you? Meaning to say that this is the way the Melchama Shal Torah. They had this argument and they had some points to make. What was I supposed to say? They were correct in their critique of you. So so that there's a lot to say about this. There's a lot to say about. That's why I didn't get upset that they called them wicked. Why specifically the Roe Bucker is what got them upset, because so. No, the Rabbi Yishalkish must have said it in front of the whole yeshiva. My kasher Risham. So since the Gemara starts talking about this confederacy of the wicked that Rish Lakish raised, what is this confederacy of the wicked? So the Gemara tells a story about Shivna. So Shivna is a story in Isaiah. We have the king Chezkiyahu and the king Sanhedrin, king of Ashur. He was, after he defeated the northern kingdom, he went and he laid siege on Jerusalem, which was under the reign of King Chezkiyahu. And at that time, there were many people led by Shivna who wanted to just surrender to Shivna. But Chezkiyahu followed the direction of Isaiah and he said, don't surrender. So this is the story, the background. Shivna Vidarish Betlesa Rabusa. Shivna used to give his drashas on Shabbos in front of 130,000 people. Chezkiyahu the king, he only had 110,000 supporters. When Sanhedrin laid a siege on Jerusalem, Kosav Shivna Piska, he wrote a note, Shada Begira, and he sent it in the arrow towards Sanhedrin. He says, Shivna V'siyaso Ishlimo, Chizkiyahu V'siyaso Lo Ishlimo. He says, we want to make peace, but Chizkiyahu doesn't want. As it says, Ki'inei Arasham Yidrachun Kashes. Because it says the wicked ones, basically they're bending their bow through the arrow, and they sent the arrow in order to kill through Lashon Hara the letter of Chizkiah and Isaiah, which was straight, and Isaiah told Chizkiah not to surrender. So Chizkiah was very afraid. So what happened then? Amar Dilma Chas V'Shalom Nate Daite the Kadosh Baruch Hu Basa Ruba. Maybe God will follow the majority. Even the Ruba Mimsuri Inu Nami Mimsuri. So he says since the majority want to give themselves over to Sanhedrin, maybe I should also do it because we're the minority. So the prophet Isaiah came and said, Lo Tomrun Kesher Kol Asher Yomar Amazek Kesher. Don't be concerned for the numbers of Shivna, because the people that they think it's a number and therefore they think it's a majority, but it's not the case. Klomar Kesher Rishayim, they're a majority, but they're a majority of the wicked. The Kesher Rishayim Minion, and if the majority is the majority of the wicked, we don't count. You only follow the majority when there's a question if they're right or wrong, but when you're certain they're wrong, you don't follow the majority, and so therefore we're not going to follow the Kesher or Rishayim. So what happened next? So Shivna was so certain he was correct, he went to dig a grave for himself, Bekivrei Beis David, amongst the graves of the house of David, because he says, I'm going to be buried with the kings. So the prophet came to him and said, Milchapo, Kichatzavtuchapo Kever. What are you doing here? You have no right to be here. God is going to move you, like you're going to be moved out. And Amarav, what is the prophet saying? He'll be moved by a man, not a woman. Till two the Gavre Kashim in the Isa. When a man moves you out, it's worse than when a woman does it. And so therefore he says you're going to be moved out like a man, you mean forcefully. And Hashem will throw you out like a bird into exile. So that moment he got leprosy. So at that moment Shivna got leprosy. And then the Gemara says, what does that mean? Tana, who became Kolon Beis Adonav, Shivna wanted to um, embarrassed Chizkiyahu, Fikach Napach Kavodo L'Kol, and therefore his honor became disgraced. So when Shivna went himself out from the city, Asa Gavriel so Shivna went out with all his followers, but Gavriel came and shut the door behind Shivna so that the followers were stuck in there on the top of 26b. Amruay, so the people of Sanhedrin said to Shivna, Mishayatcha Echa, where are all your men? Amar Hadrabi said they reversed on me. Amar Yimkena Chuki Kamachaikat Ban. You're laughing at us. Nakvu Bekvav, they pierced his heels, Vitalu Bezinve Suseim, and they hung him up by the horse's tails, Vahayu Megarin Osoa Kotsim, and they were dragging him over the thorns, Valbarnakim over the thorns. This is actually something that, if you remember in the Kinos and Tishma, we read this Kina about the second temple, that this is what they did as part of the persecutions. But there Rabbi Soloveitchik in his commentary talks about how in Warsaw the Nazis did this during the World War II, that they took a great Torah scholar and they dragged him on the back of the car. Anyway, this is what happened to Shivna. Amar Rabbi Elazar, Shivna Bal Hanaya. Shivna was a person who was very into his own personal pleasure. Rashi gives a second explanation that he was a homosexual. So and it says here, go to this sochen. And it says by King David that when he got old, he took Avishaga Shunamit Vatilo Sochenes, and she was there to warm him up and to give him benefit. So we see from here that sochen here is that he was a person of pleasure seeking. It says Kiasha Asosiera soon Tadik Mapal. It says in the pasuk, we said in the drasha that the wicked ones will stamp on the bow, and this refers to Chizkiah and Shivna. So the Gemara says, let's expound the next verse in that chapter of Tehillim, chapter 11, verse 3. It says, Ki hashatos rasun. If the shatos will be destroyed, tzaddik mapal, what good can the tzaddik do? So Rabbi Yehuda Ravina Chad Amar Ilu Chizkiah v'siyaso ne'arasim, that the pasuk means if Chizkiah and his supporters would be destroyed, tzaddik ma'pa'al, Hashem who is the righteous, what reward can he pay to the righteous? V'chadamar, another explanation is ilu beis hamikdash writes, if the temple will be destroyed, the temple's hashasos, tzaddik ma'pa'al, what good is the righteous? Where is his wonders? If the thought process of that wicked one, i.e. Shivna, will not be destroyed, that Shivna thought to destroy Chizkiah, if Shivna's thoughts will not be destroyed, Tzaddik Mapal, the righteous one, what is his reward? So we see that there are three explanations of the word Hashasos. The first is it refers to Chizkiah and his supporters. The second is to the temple. And the third is to the bad thoughts of Shivna. So the Gemara says, it makes sense that he says that this is the bad thoughts of Shivna. That's why it says Kiashasos will be destroyed. Bad thoughts are called Shasos because that it is shots for no unbelievable. Mandamar Beis Hamikdash, according to one who says it's the holy temple. Nami Evan Haisa Shamimos Nevi'im Arishonim Ushasi and the grace. There was a stone from the time of Adam, which is called the Evan Shasia. That's today inside the golden dome of the rock, and that is where the Evan Shasia is. That's the foundational stone. So according to one, it refers to Chizkiah and its supporters. Wherever else do we see that a righteous one is called the Shatzos? So the Gemara says, I'll tell you where it says in the first book of Shmuel, in chapter 2, verse 8, because this is what the Song of Hannah, she gave this prayer for a child. It says, so Hashem, there are the tzaddikim who are the foundations of the world, and Hashem makes the world founded upon them. So we see that tzaddikim are called shatzos. Or else, alternatively, from Isaiah, if we Eitzah Higdil Tushiyah, he created a council, and he created the Torah. He expanded the Torah. and those who learn it are called Tushia. Why is it called Tushia? Why is the Torah called Tushia? Because it weakens Kochel Shel Adam. It weakens your strength. How come it weakens your strength? Doesn't mean that because you're so hard you're studying the Torah, you become weaker. Because we see that there are other people who are obviously stronger, and they're not called Toshia, but rather it means that that's the way of the Torah, that whoever studies Torah becomes weaker so that his soul, physically, so that his spiritual could be stronger. Alternatively, the Torah was given secretly, so the Satan wouldn't find out about it. So that's because the Satan didn't want the Jewish people to get the Torah. What does Tushia mean? These are the words of Toshia. That means to say the Torah was Dvarim Shal Torah. It's just words in general. Sha'olam Mishusas Alayim. These are like ephemeral words. These are words that are not tangible, but the whole world is founded upon them. So then the Gemara says, Amar Ula, Machshava, a person's thoughts, the person, if the person is spending all his time worrying about how he's going to make a living, Moelis, afilu divrei Torah. That will here Moelis, typically when speaking, Moelis means help, but here it means the opposite. Here it means causes the Torah to be forgotten. As it says, Mefer machshavos haromim v'lo tasena yedehem toshia. He violates, he cancels out naked thoughts or bad thoughts, and he does not do yedehem toshia. I mean, Hashem gives the food to people, and that cancels out those those, let's say, anxious thoughts about mizonos, about making a living. Amarava imasukim lishma. If you're studying Torah lishma, then your concern about making a living will not ruin your Torah. As it says, Rabos machshavos b'levish v'atzas Hashem itakum. Mean to say that you have a lot of thoughts, even if you have a lot of thoughts about where am I going to make a living, if you're doing atzas Hashem, then if you're studying Torah, you'll always be victorious, and you're not going to forget your Torah study. Amar Rabbi Yehuda Emasai. We learned in the Mishnah that Rabbi Yehuda argues with the Chachamim, or maybe he's explaining the Chachamim or qualifying them. Chachamim say that somebody who's a gambler is going to be disqualified. And Rabbi Yehuda says that's only as a witness. Rabbi Yehuda says that's only the case if that's their main profession. If they're not, it's not their main profession, they're not disqualified. Amar Rabbi Yehuda Emasai. When they have no other profession. Amar Rabbi Avo, Amar Rabbi Lazar, like Rabbi Yehuda. The law is like Rabbi Yehuda. Amar Rabbi Avo, Amar Rabbi Lazar, Kulin Tzruchin Achros Bebezin. That somebody who's disqualified to be a witness is only disqualified if they made a proclamation about them. And all those who are disqualified, they need to have this proclamation that they're disqualified to be a witness. So the Gemara says, Roa, what about you need to make a proclamation about a shepherd that he's disqualified? Roi Puigi Baravacha Ravina. So Chadam Arbaya Achraza, one of them says that in order for the shepherd to be disqualified, you need to make a proclamation about him that he's disqualified. The Chadam Arbaya Achraza. The other one says you don't, he's automatically disqualified. Bishman Arbaya Achraza, Amraviudam Rav Stamra Apostle. It makes sense to say that you don't require proclamation. This is what Rabbi Yehuda says in the name of Rav, that a basic shepherd is disqualified. And so therefore, even if you didn't make a proclamation about him, but according to the one who says he does need a proclamation, what does it mean when it says a basic shepherd is disqualified? Mara says, no, what it means is even that we say, Rob means to say that as a basic shepherd, even though witnesses didn't come and say that they saw him grazing in other people's fields, we nevertheless will declare about him that he's a disqualified witness. We don't wait to be told that he's disqualified. We make the proclamation. There was a gift documented. The two robbers were the witnesses on this gift. Papa Rashmol thought to say that they were kosher witnesses because nobody ever proclaimed that they were disqualified. So Amar Rabba Nihid B'Ina Nachraza, the Gazlan de Rabbana. When do we need a proclamation to say that they're disqualified? If it's a rabbinic robber, like the ones that are listed in our Mishnah, like a Masachik Pekuva, Mafricha Yonim, but the Gazlan de right. So if the guy's a straight out robber, that's biblical. You don't need to proclaim first. For sure, they're disqualified, even without a proclamation. You had a question, Bill? The Gemara says, Simon Devar Varayus Ganav. So, Amar Nachman, Ochei Devar Acher Psulin La'edus. Now, as what he said above, typically speaking, Ochei Devar Acher, one who eats, is one who eats pork. But here in this case, it refers, Rashi says, to somebody who collects money from an idolater. He's going to be disqualified because they're desecrating God's name by taking the charity from the goyim, and it's like a robber is disqualified because he's doing a sin for the desire for money. That's how Rashi explains it. But Hani Mili, after Rav Nachman makes this statement, which seems kind of harsh, if the guy's got him, he has no money, he wants to collect some money from a robber, then he's going to, from an idolater, he's going to be disqualified. So the Gemara qualifies Rav Nachman's statement. Hani Mili b'farasa. It's only where he does it in public, where then the idolater, like you're like elevating the idolater, but it's in but if he does it in private, not disqualified. He's not embarrassing the Jewish community. And even in public, we only say it's the case when he could have gotten in private. And he goes ahead and gets it in public. But if he had no choice, he needs to make a living. Needs to get food. Of course he can do it. You had a question, Jeff? Well, it can't be pork, because if it was pork, Toso says, then why is there a difference between public and private? So it has to be.
The question
Of what?
It's a question of defaming God.
Right. So it's not defaming God if you eat the pork in public. So
in private. If you eat the pork in private, it's not defaming God. You can say that that's
right. But they don't say that. But so yeah. So I was thinking about that. That Rashi must have had a tradition about this. He must have had a tradition.
So
it's not as clean, but you could say that the person is desecrating God by violating this sin in public. But they're not going to say that because they talk about somebody who eats pork in public. They talk about it, but it must be that Rashi had a tradition that this is the way to do it. Because it also seems kind of random. You could have said it something else. You could have said somebody partakes in a feast of an idolater. So you could have said something else. But this is what they said. So the Gemara says, Amar Rav Nachman, Rav Nachman says, let's say you're suspected of being an adulterer. We're still going to say you're kosher to be a witness. So the Gemara says, Amar Rav Sheshus, Ani Mari, answer me, my master. Arbaim Bekatse, the kosher, you're going to accept 40 lashes for this guy because he's an adulterer. And then he's going to turn around to be a kosher witness. Amarava Modu of Nachman Isha yeah, he's going to be a kosher witness, but he can't testify about a woman because then he's going to say that she's not married, so he's allowed to be with her. Amaravina Vitimar Papa Amran El Fuka. When do we say he's not believed? To say she's not married, but to say she's married, we'll believe him. We don't have any concern because now he's making her prohibited to him. So Gemara says Pshita. Well, it's obvious he would be believed to say she's married prohibited. Gemara says no. Ma'alatima. You might have thought to say, Difle. He prefers her to be married. They'll say Ma'im Gnuvim Yimtaku. Stolen water is sweeter, so he wants her to be married. So we shouldn't believe him. Kamashmon the Kamer the Kaima. No, he prefers that she's not married because it's easier. Amar Nachman. Okay, so the Gemara says, it says of Nachman, Gana of Nisan, somebody who steals in the month of Nisan, which is the harvest, the Gana of Tishrei, and then he steals in the month of Tishrei, which is not the harvest of the wheat and the barley, but the gathering of the crop of the fruits. Lo Shmei Gana. He's not considered to be disqualified to be a witness, a thief. But Ani Mili Barise, that's only if he's a sharecropper or Davar Muat, Bedavar Shenigmar Mulachto. It's only by a sharecropper because the sharecropper is allowed to eat while he's picking, and if it's a small amount, So therefore, he says to himself, "I'm not stealing," and that's all by something that's completed. So he's not like doing business with it, he's just eating while he's eating. So he says, I'm not really intending to steal. I'm just saying that he thinks he's allowed to do it. The worker's allowed to eat, so the sharecropper thinks he's like a worker and he can eat. Ikari to Rav Zvid, Chad Ganav Kaba Desari Apostoli. The farmer of Rav Zvid once stole a kav of barley and he disqualified. V'chad Ganav Kibura Ahine Apostoli. And the other one stole a cluster of dates. And Rav Zvid also disqualified him because he wasn't taking his fruits from the field, but he was taking it from the owner. And so therefore he had no permission. And so he wasn't a sharecropper. He was getting paid. And so therefore he was like a thief and he was disqualified. Hanu Kabore, so they're these grave diggers, the cover Nafsha, Biyom Tov, the cover Nafsha, Biyom Tov Rishon Shaloteres. So there was a grave digger that they buried somebody on the first day of Shavuos in exchange for money, even though you know how to do that. You know how to take money to bury somebody. You can on the first day we say in Gemara based on the first day you have to can only do it through a non-Jew, and they did it. So Shemtina Rapano Paslinu Edus, or Papa excommunicated them and disqualified them. Machshirina Rafuna prayed to Yeshua, but Rafuna allowed them. Amalei Rav Papa Varashaimdinu. How do you allow them to witness it? They're wicked. Savri mitzvah kampi. No, they thought that they were doing a good thing. They said we're not disqualified. We think we're doing a good deed. Mar says, but we excommunicated them. And so they know it's not good. No, they said, no, maybe we're excommunicated. The rabbis want to get us an atonement because we violated this mitzvah. And so therefore they excommunicated. But really, we're allowed to do this thing. So they justified it. Gemara, one time, Dr. Chaim Soloveitchik told me the following story. He said one time the head Ganoff of Brisk came to, they wanted him to be a witness for his daughter was getting married. The head Ganoff of Brisk, his daughter was getting married. They wanted to know if people want to know if they'd go to his wedding. So they asked Reb Chaim. So Reb Chaim, this is Chaim Soloveitchik's great-grandfather. So he said, I need to go and interview the head Ganoff. So he invites the head Ganoff, calls him up. He says, come and meet with me. I want to interview you. He says, okay, sure. So he comes to meet him. He says, Rebbe, what do you want from me? So he says, what's your job? He goes, I have to make a living. I'm a Ganoff. He says, I'm a Ganoff? You're a Ganoff? So sometimes you go into people's homes and they have some, when you go into the people's homes, they have some sandwiches on the table. And would you eat from their food? He says, yeah, of course. He said, it's parnasa. He said, but let's say that the food is like pork or not kosher. Would you eat from it? He said, Rebbe, do you think I'm going to eat treif? So he said, you can eat at the wedding. You can go to his wedding and you can eat there. So just because you're disqualified in one area doesn't mean you're disqualified in the other area. All right, we'll stop here. And the Benedict shares at 9:30, the daily Mishnah. Shkoyach.